message at 360-279-4512, no later than 5 p.m. the day prior. Let the record, number one, roll call. Let the record show that Commissioner Mishu is absent, and also Sarah Shai. She is present remotely, excuse me. So anyway, we do have 5 of the 6 commissioners here this evening. Second item is the approval of the minutes of February 28, 2023, regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Seeing that there's no one in the audience here, we will not need to do the public comment this evening. And we also did not receive anything via telephone. The fourth item is the public meetings and hearings. And the first item this evening is the SEPA thresholds. And this is a public hearing. And it will be brought to us by Dennis Lefevre, Senior.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Good evening. I hope you can see my screen. I am sharing it. So if you are seeing a PowerPoint, I think we're on the right track here. This is the third touch for you folks on the SEPA threshold amendment that we are proposing. And as a brief refresher, we use the SEPA as a kind of an environmental review for most of our projects that we look at in development services and throughout the city for that matter. There are some categories that are exempt from the SEPA requirements, and those are included in the WAC 197.11.800. And one of those categories is the minor new construction. Obviously, as we've mentioned in the past, minor new construction can be single family or multifamily, agricultural structures, minor office, school, or commercial developments, parking, landfills, and excavations. Our most recent amendments to increase the thresholds was back in August of 2004, so it's been quite a while. State has gone through and ratcheted up those thresholds quite a bit, actually, to address basically the affordable housing issues that are facing our state. At our last meeting with the Planning Commission and also the subsequent meeting with the City Council, there was a recommendation to increase our single-family dwelling units threshold from 9 to 20. We are currently at 4. We were recommending as a staff to go to 9. And due to the discussions with the Planning Commission and City Councils, we are also going to be moving our thresholds up to 20 dwelling units as a recommendation. That, of course, made us take a look at our findings that we had established for single-family residential dwelling units, and we have revised those accordingly and also sent the revised amendments to Department of Commerce for their review. However, even at 20, we are still under the state maximum of 30 dwelling units, as you can see. So we are looking at moving our single family up to 20 and keeping our multifamily at 20. Barns, loafing sheds, which are very rare in the city, we're going to keep at 10,000 square feet. Office, school, and commercial, we're moving up to 12,000. Parking facilities, standalone parking facilities, we're going to look at 40 spaces. And then fills or excavations, currently we're at 100 cubic yards. We're going to bump that up to 500. I don't have the slide that shows the comparison to other regional communities, but I think if you recall, there was kind of a push to maintain concurrence with other local governments that have raised their thresholds, in particular Anacortes, I think Mount Vernon. So this moving a single family residential threshold up to 20 units is going to keep us consistent with other regional jurisdictions. So what's next in this process? we're continuing our coordination with Washington Department of Transportation, which is a requirement of basically a new rule that was instituted back in January. If we receive some substantive recommendations or mitigation requirements from WashDOT, we will probably bring it back to Planning Commission for your re-ratification. But assuming there are no wrinkles that WashDOT throws at us, we are looking at a draft ordinance, which is in your packet. There's two versions of that ordinance, one with a strike-through underline, and then one ordinance that is a clean version of that. Of course, your Planning Commission public hearing is tonight. That's a requirement according to code. We are seeking your recommendation, which we'll take to the City Council at their public hearing on May 16th. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. If not, staff is recommending a recommended motion that you can make tonight. So with that, I'm opening up for questions.
Dennis, I need to open the public hearing, I believe. I didn't do
Okay.
that prior, so the public hearing is now open, and now we'll take comments, suggestions, etc.
Thank you, Dennis. Can you remind me or help me understand, what was the reasoning that the staff settled on 9 originally?
Well, we looked at that as being a cutoff between the short subdivisions and a major subdivision. 10 and over, it takes a different process for approval, whereas with a short plat, it's a little bit more expedited. So we're kind of looking at that, but you know, upon review of the recommendation to go up to 20, we figured the environmental impacts are still protected by what we have as far as the local government and code, state and federal regulations for the environment. So we thought it was a safe bet to go up to 20 units.
Thank you.
A question.
Tara?
Dennis, could you tell us a little bit more about the, I believe the landfill or the going from 100 cubic yards to 500? Like, what would be the use case there, and would there be potential environmental impacts in that step up that stakeholders in the community wouldn't know about because of this increase?
Typically, 100 cubic yards is a fairly small amount of soil to move, grading, and a move up to 500 cubic yards. As far as area-wise, I'm not very sure on what that would entail, but again, we acted on a lot of the recommendations from other communities where they have gone up to 500 cubic yards. Engineering didn't seem to have a pushback on going up to 500 cubic yards. So, you know, we base this recommendation on the engineering expertise of the city.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dennis. Any other input, thoughts, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to recommend the adoption of ordinance number 1970 to the City Council, amending OHMC sections OHMC 20.04.100, which is thresholds for categorical exemptions.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second. Call
Mr.
for-
Chairman, did you want to close the public hearing?
Oh, yes, I could do that before the vote. The public hearing is now closed. Okay, I do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you, Dennis. One more time.
Thank you, commissioners.
Yep. The next item this evening is the appointment of the Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. And this is a public meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to the other folks, since I'm the one leaving, the other commissioners, to give me input. We'll start with the chair, and then we'll go to the vice chair. Sarah, are you here? You have an interest, Sarah?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't here at the last meeting for part of the discussion, but would be, if you're looking for someone to fill into chair or vice chair role, I would be willing to do so.
Okay, there you go. So now we need to,
So before we do a vote, I have not officially declared if I'm going to run for another seat at another position. So out of respect for that and continuity for the commission, I would prefer not to be nominated for a position in the event that I do make that decision.
and then there were 3. Do I have anybody wanting to nominate someone or themselves for the chair
Well-
position?
I'll also throw my name in the hat for either chair or vice chair. Semi-retired, working as a substitute teacher here in the district, and I do not have a desire to run for public office, so.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else would like to run for chair? Any other nominations for the chair? Okay, having stated that, I think that we need to vote. A one-person interest would be,
Can I go ahead and nominate?
yes,
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Schreck for chairperson of the Planning Commission.
who was that now? Schott? Schott, Sarah Schott, for commissioner.
My apologies.
No problem. Okay, now we have a 2-person show, maybe, 1. Okay,
Are we in a second?
Yep.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a nomination and a second. All in favor of Sarah Schott, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Sarah, you beat a 1.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
yes.
May 1st, right?
Yeah, well, the next month is my last meeting, but I'm not sure that I should be the chair next month.
The chair nomination would begin at the next meeting.
Yes, because, yes. So, there you are. Now we need a vice chair, if we could, commissioners.
You want to do the nomination? I think we already know who it is. All right, I will nominate Commissioner Chazar to the vice chair position.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second?
Okay.
No.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign? Congratulations. Well, that takes care of that business for now. The next item is the public engagement presentation. It's a public meeting, and Sabrina Combs is going to do the presenting. Sabrina, welcome.
Good evening, commissioners. Okay. All right. So I'm here this evening to speak about community outreach and how we engage with the public. As you stated, my name is Sabrina Combs, and I'm the Communications and IT Manager for the city. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how we share information about the Planning Commission meetings. First off, what we do is every year on an annual basis, we enter all of the meeting dates into the calendar on the city website. That makes it available for all the different boards, committees, and commission meetings so that people can see those. Also, any annual events that we might have as well, so that the community can find those easily. And those link, when you click on the actual dates, as the agendas are made available, those link to the Agenda Center. Next, we update the Agenda Center. The Agenda Center is created with the agenda item And then as we get the details for the meeting, for example, the meeting minutes or the video from YouTube, we share those so that people can reference that information on the site. Starting in 2023, now that we've gotten the website and used to some of the tools, we've added the videos for the 2023 meetings. How we go about this is that we take the notice to the public that the Senior Administrative Assistant and Development Service creates, and we put that on the city website, as I just talked about. Then we make sure it's also added to the bulletin board at City Hall, and then a notice is sent to the press currently. The last notice was posted on Monday, March 13th, and that's for tonight's meeting. That notice is then used by me, and what I do is I create an event in a social media post on Facebook, and the purpose of that post is to give people the information. It includes the agenda and how to make public comments. The reason that we use this feature of using the event and not just a simple post is the event will actually remind people about the upcoming item, tell them that the meeting's tonight, tell them that it's going to start soon, and so it provides those information and updates as the meeting approaches. The other thing that we do is we create a Channel 10 mini video or commercial, and that highlights the information for what the Planning Commission is, that you're an advisory body. It also talks about the upcoming agenda, so I update that each time, and again, it provides public comment information. The public comment form that we're putting on there for the website advises people about how to make a public comment. It gives all of the details for how to do that, whether you want to do it in person, write an email to the city clerk, or you can call in prior to the meeting. The other thing that we did recently was enhance the form so that it also allows you to notify that advisory body. So if it's the Planning Commission, you can check that box. The benefit of this for the community has been that you can also check two boxes. So let's say you want to tell the Planning Commission and you also want to tell City Council. Both of those boxes are available so that you can notify both of those bodies about what's the concerns that you have or questions that you might have. Then meeting videos. What we do to also promote and share information about the Planning Commission is that we have the videos that broadcast live on YouTube, and then they also broadcast now live on Facebook, so people can follow along and watch the meeting as it's happening. They can also refer back to it after the meeting on those channels. On the YouTube channel, the benefit there is you can also go back to previous meetings that you can see on the right-hand side. And we also see a lot of statistical data about, how many people are watching, when they're tuning in, how long they're watching, that type of stuff. We don't actually see the individual, but we do see those types of responses. We also might see comments or likes regarding certain topics as they're happening. Then in addition to that, we put the recorded video on cable channel 10 or HD 1090 for people to refer to for about the next month that they can follow along before the next meeting happens. Then now we're going to talk about legal requirements, and I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney, Hillary Evans. So Hillary, are you on?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Nice to meet you all. I'm Hillary Evans. I'm the city's attorney, have been for over a year now. I have been asked to come in and just do a quick Q&A. I know you've all had OPMA training. I know you've all had public records training. I don't know how long ago that was, but it's always a good refresher opportunity for me to come in and chat with you and answer any questions that you might have. So one thing that has been, problematic's probably not the right word, but has become an issue in the last 10 years with not just commissions and boards, but also councils, is social media. And I'm sure you all have social media accounts. It's a little more defined with people who are running for election. Usually they have a campaign Facebook page and their personal Facebook page. But a lot of times these things are blurred, and you are citizens, you are advocates for your city, and you serve in this capacity. And it's really important to keep in mind how those things all interrelate. And specifically, I'm talking about public records. OPMA can be implicated when it comes to social media, but that's a class for another day, and I could go on for hours. But essentially, you want to be very mindful of when you are on social media talking about city business, because it is very hard to discern when that's occurring, whether or not you are speaking as a commissioner or as a resident. And so if there were to be a public records request that said, I want all of Commissioner Jones's comments for the last year, the city would be obligated to go and ask you if you've ever commented on social media and on what platforms. Was it Instagram? Was it LinkedIn? Was it, MySpace or whatever? And we'd have the obligation, and you would have the obligation to go and collect all those things. It's a very fine line between public engagement as a resident and performing in your official capacity. And so my advice to you is just don't do it. Sabrina and the staff at the city are very, very good at outreach. If you have suggestions or ideas for her, they're very open and welcoming to any way to get more participation and support. But it really is it's a trap. And if you end up posting things on your own social media, even something as innocuous as, hey, planning commission meeting tonight, would love to see people there, it can really open you up and your personal accounts and your personal email accounts and your personal cell phones. The more that these things are used, the more open you are and opening yourselves up to public records requests. In addition, it is possible to violate the OPMA through social media. And I'm thinking specifically of an example of that innocuous comment. Hey, don't forget we have a planning commission meeting tonight. Commissioner Jones thumbs up it, a council member likes it, somebody comments on it, a conversation starts, and before you know it, a quorum of you may have passed on the comment, may have discussed the comment, and that could create a serial meeting. And I'm sure you remember that scary term from back in your OPMA training days. But essentially a serial meeting is when a quorum of your body conducts business. It doesn't even mean making decisions, but if you're, discussing city business as a quorum, you can be in violation of the OPMA, and that can be done via phone calls, emails, social media, or a combination of all of those things. So it really is very, very, very important that you think carefully before even doing something as simple as liking someone's post or sharing information about the city. You can, and I would recommend that you do, set up, Commissioner Jones Oak Harbor at gmail.com. You could set up a separate email account. That email account could open up an official Facebook page for you as a commissioner, and you could participate in that way. It's much cleaner to make those segregations and draw those lines. But especially if there's going to be, a public hearing on something, and what, if you say, we have a public hearing coming up on Thursday, and someone comments and says, great, can't wait to see how that turns out. Is that a public comment to the hearing? Does that need to be included in the record? Are we then obligated to provide them notice of all following hearings? Should we publish that and include that as part of the record? So you can see it's quite a slippery slope, and frankly, it does place a great burden on our staff, which no one wants to do because they're already doing their best, to track those comments, to try and figure out where comments might potentially be in the case of a request, and to track everything down. And as you know, we can all be financially liable for failing to provide records that are responsive. Facebook seems like a gravy train for someone who's sophisticated at public records requests. If they see an active dialogue going on between two commissioners, for instance, they ask the city, I want all communications by Commissioner so-and-so for the last 6 months. City fails to provide that Facebook thread, even if it's on, a random page. That requester can win fines and penalties against us, even if it's a trap, even if it's a trick. So this is not, I often come in with public records and OPMA and scare the daylights out of people, and that's not my intent. My intent is just to remind you that it is a very complex situation when you're on a commission or a board and you have social media. I would recommend that you don't use social media in your official capacity or speak about city business, but I know that that's not realistic because you're active members of your city. So just think carefully, think twice, and if you have questions, ask me or Sabrina. We are always a resource for you. Sabrina, is there anything I missed?
Nope, I think that sounds good. Does anybody have any questions while we have Hillary on the line? I just want to make sure. Okay. All
Is there
right.
anything I missed?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Okay, you guys have any questions?
I do.
Oh, there we go.
There was anybody else in the room have questions? I don't want to.
No, I got head nod saying no, so.
Okay. Well, thank you for those presentations. So on social media outreach, it would be really helpful if we could get, I know you're, referring to trainings and existing law, but what would be really helpful is just like a 1 to 2 page document from your office on here are ways that you can engage in social media, like including some of the recommendations that you made, because you're right, it isn't really possible to be a member of the community and also you all have heard me and others on this committee concerned about the lack of public engagement, not necessarily on the city's behalf, but that we don't have citizens engaging us, right? At public meetings or in comment. And so, I think it is, not a requirement, but a nice to have to be able to reach out on social media and let people know that we're listening and available, especially because all of these amazing resources that the city has put together, the average citizen doesn't really know where to look, that they should look for these things. They may feel intimidated by the process. They may not feel like it's their place, and having someone encouraging them that their voice does matter can lead to more voices from the community being heard. So I guess what I'm saying is it would be nice to have a 1 to 2 page document that was some recommendations based on Washington state law on how to best engage, or if you find for some reason you have to use your personal account to engage, should we be screenshotting that and sending it into your team? How should we be handling those? So would it be possible to get some kind of document guidance from your team?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person for guidance, because if you're asking a lawyer, my advice to you is don't do it.
Look, I worked in open government and transparency technology my entire career.
Yeah.
Okay? So I totally get it. I've worked with dozens of lawyers like yourself. Mm-hmm. So I realize I'm asking you a difficult and challenging, goes against the grain thing. But I guess what I'm asking is for some documentation on what are low risk opportunities or lower risk opportunities. What are best practices you'd like to see us take? I'm way more familiar with like texting laws in Washington state than I am with social media laws in Washington state. So it would just be really helpful, because honestly, when anybody who's working with government hears just don't do it, then you're like, what? How do I help? How do I bridge gaps?
Yeah.
My job as a commissioner is to bridge the gap between public and government, right? So yeah.
So I don't know that I can write you up a 2-page document, and you seem pretty sophisticated when it comes to these laws. I think the best, so the truism here about public records is if anybody asks for your communication, it's going to include Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, Hotmail, TikTok, whatever it is we're using these days, right? And so I'd challenge you to think about, if that request were made, how would you go about collecting it? So that's why I recommend maybe setting up a Gmail exclusively. I'm sure you have a city email address, but if it were me, I would set up a city email account that's like HillaryEvansCommissioner@gmail.com. I would use that Gmail to open a professional LinkedIn, a professional or a commissioner LinkedIn, a commissioner Instagram, a commissioner Facebook, and use that exclusively so that whenever a public records requests come in, I can hand over the keys to the kingdom, having kept them separate. That way you keep your personal Gmail, your personal Instagram clean, and you don't have to worry about producing those records. I think it's an easier mental exercise. But as to best practices and case law, it's such an emerging area of the law. You just have to treat it as though it were an email. You have to treat it as though it were a text message, because that's how the law is evolving and moving. But I'll think about best practices. I'm not going to promise you that I'll come up with anything other than what I've just said. And certainly, Sabrina, being your tech guru, can speak to you about whether or not the strategies that you brainstorm is a good solution from their end or a bad solution from their end. I think Sabrina, with our new PRO, offer a wealth of knowledge, and they can help you work the problem backwards before it becomes a problem. So that we are comfortable knowing that if one of those awful public records requests comes in asking for all your communications, we already know how we're going to tackle that, and it's not going to be a problem.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
I had a couple questions for Sabrina, but I don't want to hog the mic if others have questions.
Go ahead. I didn't have any.
So Sabrina, congratulations on all the improvements to the website and integrating the videos and just having one neat place for everybody to look. Couple things I had questions on. How far in advance do you post meetings to Facebook?
It honestly depends. Sometimes I get the notifications, and I will say kudos to Sarah. She's really good about getting me the information for the public notice well in advance so that I can get that into my schedule and get that posted. So I would say sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's at 2 weeks, depending on what's going on with my schedule. Sometimes for some of our advisory groups, it can be a couple days just because of the staff working on it. And that's why we're working on standardizing some of these tools so that we can have a template for everything and make it much faster in that process.
Great, yeah. I think sometimes I'm seeing, at least Facebook is saying that this event was posted, not that the actual meeting, but the page for the event was posted maybe a day in advance. And so I think that makes it a little bit tougher for folks to find. It's nice to hear that you guys are working on that timeline. It'd be great to see at least 2 weeks in advance for that. And then I was also wondering, has anyone tested the language used for Planning Commission around our meetings or the agenda for reading level? The average American reads and writes at 8th grade reading level. And so I think some of our terminology that we use, clearly, like it's going to be more complex because it's policy and planning. But oftentimes I'm noticing that in written documents or agendas, we have undefined acronyms being used or jargon that might be useful to place definitions somewhere in the document, and test language that we're putting out to the public, whether that's the Facebook meeting or on the agenda page, to test that to see what reading level we're coming at, so that the documentation for the Planning Commission is more accessible to all.
I will say, Commissioner, that's something that we're constantly working on with the new website and with documents we put out. We're always trying to catch those. I won't say that we catch them 100% of the time, but we are working with departments to say, when you use this acronym, what does it mean? When we're using this term, is there a way to explain that in simple language, which is one of the terms we use? So we can continually work on that, and as we work towards standardizing these templates, that's one of the things we can add, because the group's getting together to talk about that.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to just finish with the rest of the presentation, if that's okay. So the clicker didn't want to click. Oh, there it goes. So as I was just talking about, we're doing standardization. So we're going to be meeting with the staff members who are working on these different advisory groups. And what we're doing is we're going to be looking at bylaws. Some of our bylaws are extremely old. They haven't been updated in a long time. I think one of them, in fact, we went back to the 1980s, and it was like, okay, we need to do some quick updates to those. And so just look through them and make sure that as a committee that you're, or a body, that you're agreeing with the terms and the information that's said in them. Then the other thing is creating standardized templates, as I was just talking about. All agendas looking alike. That will also help the community to understand if they all look similarly, they can find the information in the same places, they know the format of the meeting. It will also help the meetings to run better. And then we're going to work on confirming which notices have to go in the paper, which don't, and what those requirements are according to the laws that are governing those. And then website content, again, making sure that's more consistent and clearer and that everybody's using the same method so you're not doing different things for different groups. And then making sure those meeting minutes and videos are available for the public to reference. And then overall, one of the parts of this presentation that I really want to talk about is our communication channels. We do have a lot of different channels and a lot of different platforms that we're using, as well as a lot of different things that we're talking about for the city. It's very exciting that the city has so much going on, but sometimes that can be a challenge. And so part of my job is really trying to make sure that we have that information presented in several places and specific places that tie in with that. So sometimes you'll see, for instance, lately there's been Department of Commerce information for businesses, and I put more of that information focused on LinkedIn and Facebook, but I didn't necessarily put all of that information quickly as a press release on the city website, but it is under economic development because that's where some of that information is set up for the businesses to reference. We might put stuff on cable channel 10, but we have to be careful that that is referenced in a way. It can't just be that standard flyer because that doesn't look good at 8-point font on a TV screen in somebody's house sometimes. So we really try to balance that communication and understand where do we need to have those points, and then also talking with project managers and saying, okay, the item that you're doing, should we take that back to a council workshop and make sure that the community and council hears that again and knows what the next steps are? So those are some of the things that we're doing to help improve that, is just really making sure that we're able to address those things in a clear way. And then having information on the city website so that's an easy reference to send people back to if they're looking for those resources. So an example of that is our open house event we have coming up here at City Hall. Again, we want to have more engagement with the community. Coming out of COVID has been challenging, and getting people back to coming together and having an event is something that people want to do, but we also have to get back in that new habit. So one of the things we're doing is having some open houses. It's something that the community's asked for, council has asked for, our staff has even asked for it. It'd be nice to have more gatherings. So what we're doing is having the City Hall open house, and then an event in the future, this spring and summer, we're going to have one at the city shop that will feature Public Works and Parks and Recreation. So what these events are going to do is give people an opportunity to come to City Hall, see the building, see where people are working, learn about the departments and what's going on in them, and have those engagements with staff members so that they can talk about those things. It's also an opportunity for council members and commissioners to have that engagement with the public as well. So at those events, we will also have an opportunity for people to see the city clerk, see where the city clerk sits, understand public comment, have somebody in the conference room here where they'll be able to walk people through how to do a public comment, how to submit information to the city, and understand that process. Also, how to do public records requests. So we're going to have that team here as well to answer those questions. So just really help the public understand how to have that engagement with city staff. So with that, any other questions?
Commissioner Plumlee?
Thanks, Sabrina. Is Hillary still online? I just had a couple clarification questions before I ask my question for you, Sabrina.
I don't know if she dropped.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Thank you. So when you mentioned the serial meetings, the city puts out a notice on Facebook, commissioners engage with that notice. Is that considered a risk of a serial meeting, or is it only when a commissioner creates their own post, for example?
This is a case that hasn't been tested in the courts yet, but my hunch is that that would qualify as a serial meeting if a quorum of you engaged about city business online.
On the city's website, it would still count as that with
Facebook comments. I see this case. I haven't seen it litigated, but I know it's coming, where 5 county commissioners comment on the same Facebook post. That it's a OPMA violation. I'm just waiting for that case to come down because I see it. You're not alone. Every single one of my cities and every single one of my clients has this problem, because the reason you're doing what you're doing is you're all actively engaged in the city. So it's a known problem. And we don't have cases on point yet, but it's coming, and I don't want you to be the test case. My hunch is that that would be an OPMA violation.
Okay, thank you. My other question for you, when you talked about have your separate page, now, is having just a separate page on your social media platforms sufficient, or should it really be a different account? Because, for example, myself, I have a personal page, but then I have my business page, and I have all these, but they're all under one account.
The reason I suggest a different page is for tracking purposes. You're opening, whatever account you're using to do anything related to the city, you're opening it up to public records requests. So if you can neatly cordon off one page, I don't think it matters if they're all opened by the same Gmail account. But you're opening that Gmail account up, if that's what it is. Which is why I just recommend starting from scratch and just completely siloing your city engagement with a new Hotmail address, a new Instagram, a new LinkedIn. A lot of electeds do that. You'll see the Anna Smith personal page and the Anna Smith Judge, work page. So it's really just, it's for you, for when that request comes in and how it makes it easiest for you to track your city business, your city comments, your city engagement, and to protect your personal and your business pages and not open those up to public records requests.
So if they were all under one account, could the person request the entire account, or would they just be able to request that specific page?
And I don't know how the back end looks from your end, but my hunch is that if you can probably make a pretty strong, so Instagram, I have a Hillary account and I have a dog account, and neither of the two shall mix. Like, there's no commonality between the two, even though I use the same email account to open both. My hunch is that would be the same for you, and you could make a strong argument that just because they're all opened with by the same human being with the same email account, that there's no cross-pollination. I think you could make that case.
Thank you.
And sorry, I'll add on to that. Even as a city employee, I have 2 Facebook accounts. There's my Facebook account I use to conduct city business that's tied to the city's pages, and then there's the Facebook that I have that's personal. And I just make sure to do that because when I worked at a previous city, that's how we separated, and it's been a good system. So any staff that I'm working with that is doing that, I always recommend the first step that they take is create that city profile, and they don't have any friends, they don't have any fun, but it's just so that we can regulate getting those emails in regarding Facebook accounts back to the city drives and emails, and then we know that information is secure.
Thank you. I guess that's what I was asking, is under that Facebook account, that hierarchy where you can set up multiple pages and they do different things, is that sufficient, or should you create a whole new Facebook account specifically for what you're public facing doing?
My recommendation is I do completely separate, similar to what Hillary's suggesting of having even your separate Gmail, because there's all that communication that's kicked back from what you're doing. And so all of that is stored in one place, and when they come ask for it, then you have it in one referenceable place that you can go to. And for city accounts, we use Archive Social so that we can retrieve that information, but that's specific to the city's accounts.
Thank you. And then Sabrina, my question for you was, when we're doing this outreach, are you getting any feedback on the advisory role of the commissions as to why there may be a lack of engagement? And to kind of clarify what I'm trying to get at, if I as a private citizen know that the commission is advisory and they have no real power to affect any change, and their recommendation is simply going to go to city council, I'm going to save myself that hour and I'm going to go to city council directly.
I haven't specifically had any comment about that. We use the term advisory role because that is what, when we talked about it as staff, especially with the city clerk, and what we were thinking, these boards, committees, and commissions are categorized as, they are advisory roles to council. That's what council said, that's the information we use. But I haven't had anybody negatively or say anything in that regard. In fact, even at park board meetings and other places, sometimes people come at that place because they want to have the conversation or the initial discussion with that body before it goes to council. And sometimes you guys are recommending based on what you're hearing, so that's where some of that guidance come in, where people want to have that initial conversation, because your decision to support or not support that may come out of those comments from the public.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
I have one more for either Hillary or Sabrina, and I'd be happy to take answers in email as well, but wondering, so a lot of what's been described here requires like the citizen to know where to look, where to go, and for essentially them to be inbound to us, right? And Facebook pages or events oftentimes require folks to know to be looking for it. Once in a while, they'll get served them up in the mix of suggested posts or something. But if we wanted to do anything that was outreach, in person or online, you know, like essentially, who do we reach out to plan that? Either as individual commissioners or as a commission?
I think it depends on the subject you're talking about, to be more specific, but you can reach out to me. I will say in response to your, you know, with the different platforms we're using, one of the reasons, if you look in the utility bills this month, one of the things that we added was a newsletter. It was another attempt at reaching people in a different way, because I agree with you, not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's looking at the city website, not everybody looks at the electronic sign in downtown, but we're trying to find different ways to connect with the community. So one of the ways that we thought might work, based on some feedback from council, was to potentially create a newsletter that just went in and talked about where to find this information, some of the upcoming topics, and so that went into utility bills this month. So like I said, we're constantly looking at new ways to do it, so if you have a suggestion or idea, you're more than welcome to bring those to me, and I'm more than happy to talk about them, vet those out with the team involved, because a lot of times it's not just necessarily just me, it's some other department or some staff in that department that we need to work with to coordinate that.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, a lot of communities that I've looked at, or like, just because in school we have to essentially nitpick communities. I will say that like it's great of you guys to be posting it on so many different levels and in so many different ways. And I actually saw the one in my utility bill today, so I would say that's actually a very useful place to also be putting it.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I would just say, let me know if there's anything else you need. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Well, thank you, Sabrina. You've been quite informative. Thanks.
Glad to help.
The next item on the agenda this evening is building code updates. And this is a public meeting. David Cool will.
Thank you,
lead
Mr.
us through
Chairman,
this.
members of the commission. Appreciate that. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the building code, and this is Title 17 in our Oak Harbor Municipal Code. So we're not actually proposing to change the building code itself, but this changes Title 17, which implements our building code for us. So once again, Title 17, and there'll be two provisions we'll be talking about tonight in Title 17. Section 17.05.030, that deals with the plan check fee. This would change the timing of collection of the plan check fees upfront rather than 6 months after someone submits. And so how this came about was, in the years past, the city used to work with customers at the counter. They would bring in physical plans and application forms. They would talk to staff, and staff would go back and forth with them. Staff would help them calculate the plan check fee. And plan check fee, again, is a fee that you pay that is 65% of the building permit fee. And that fee is designed so that you pay for the plan review of the building code information up front. And so that used to be the code here. Staff became overwhelmed, I think, that I'm told in the past. They would have a customer at the counter, and then we'd have another one, and then another one. And they didn't feel like they had time to actually process all the plan check fee for someone at the counter. So it was changed at that time to be able to let people just drop plans off. And then they would drop plans off, and then when the staff had time, they would get to it. And then they would collect everything at the same time when the building permit was issued. And that worked fairly conveniently. However, since that time, when COVID hit, we started taking in plans via email. And so that was the first step to electronic submittal. The plans were digital. They were submitted through the pipeline through email, and we were able to process all the information, but it was still fairly slow. Now we have a new electronic permitting system. People can sit at their home or at their office. They can type in all their application information. They can submit their plans digitally online, and then it's right there. They just need to pay the plan check fee at that time. This is the way it's done everywhere. You always collect the plan check fee up front. I mean, this is a standard. My sense is the city probably just got away from it for a while because people got overwhelmed at the counter. For those of you that have worked in retail like I have, I know what it's like. You have a customer there that's taking a lot of time, and you have 2 or 3 people backed up. You're trying to get to different things, and people get kind of antsy. So I can see why the city went that direction, but it's time now that we have a digital permitting system to go ahead and bring it back to where it needs to be. And so that's the rationale for this particular section. Before I move on to the next title, is there any questions you might have on this concept? Make sense? Cool. So once again, the new code will allow the collection of the plan check fee at the building permit application, or before the building permit application, at the application I should say, and then when the application is issued, the plan check fee will have been paid up front. Once again, standard practice that we do everywhere, and so this should help clear that up. The next section I'd like to talk about tonight is Title 17-05060, and that is your permit expiration. This would change the expiration of a building permit from 6 months to 2 years. Currently in our code, your building permit expires within 6 months of it being issued. I've seen it done that way in some places. Lots of places it's a year. A lot of places it's 2 years. We feel a 2-year time frame is fair. It gives people time to actually process their permit, keep working on their plans, keep working on their inspections, their construction. And at the 2-year mark, this provision that we have in front of you would allow for a 1-year extension. And the building official would have that capability to grant the 1-year extension. Normally 3 years is enough time to finish a project, but certainly if we're making progress, we can continue it infinitum as long as we need to. The main reason for this change is, once again, a contractor, when they come in, they don't want to have to keep coming back and revitalizing their permit every 6 months. Staff doesn't want to have to keep tracking these things to make sure every 6 months that it's active, because they don't want to let it expire. So we think this would be more efficient for the contractors, and it'll be more efficient for the staff to put a 2-year time frame on this. And once again, as I mentioned here, it's a very common practice in many jurisdictions, and we think that this is appropriate at this point in time for this city. We have a new building official here, Ginger Pennington. She's been here a couple years almost, and so she's trying to make the changes that we have seen work in other places. And so that's the rational reason behind this before you tonight. Once again, we're not changing the building code itself. This is just changing Title 17. So any questions on this concept here?
Commissioner Sajar?
Question for you. So a building permit's issued right now, and it's good for 6 months. The change is 2 years. So if a building code or anything changes 18 months after that building permit's been issued, the building has not commenced yet, is that builder grandfathered under the old code?
The builder would be grandfathered under the old code once they get a permit under that code. We feel that, as you know, the cycle is every 3 years for the building code to be updated. And so this will give people a chance to finish the building under the current building code and allow people that come along later to process their plans in a building code that's 3 years out. And so, good question, though. Certainly something we considered when we did this.
Commissioner Plumlee?
Thank you, David. Going back to the first one and the electronic permitting program, if someone wants to submit their plans, but I'm assuming they'd be an online payment, but that would come with a service fee, is there a provision where they can submit their plans digitally and get them started and then come down to the city just to pay that fee? Or would they not even be able to get anything moving until it's been paid?
Another good question. Certainly, your question is, can they pay the fee in another method rather than pay it online with a credit card? So the answer to that is currently we don't charge a service fee for our credit cards. And so we've talked about doing that internally and using that money as a technology fee to be able to invest in other future technologies we need. But we haven't gone that far yet. And so we've tried to get people started to start using their credit cards and their other ATM cards or whatever they have, and to generate people using our system. Maybe eventually we'll have to think about creating a fee, but we haven't talked internally about that yet. Yes?
In the event that they generate that, what happens to the plans that they've submitted digitally between the time when they submit them and when they finally come down to pay for it?
The plans go into the plan review system, and they sit there. And my sense is it wouldn't start being reviewed as a complete application until the plan review fee would be paid.
Thank you.
Any other concerns, comments?
Just to follow up to that question, does the system allow for an ACH ability to put a check and routing number, checking account and routing number into the system instead of a credit card? No? Okay, thanks.
Good questions. So the next steps in this process are the council workshop is on April 26th, and then the planning commission hearing will be on May 24th, and the final city council hearing will be on June 6th. So as you know, we try and give a couple touches to each the planning commission and the city council so that we work out the issues together. And certainly we'll be available as staff. If you have any questions, feel free to pick up the phone and call us and ask that question, and we'll make sure we provide the same information to the entire commission when we come back for another meeting. So thank you. So this is ready for your, I guess we're not considering this tonight. This is just a workshop,
Nope.
so.
Public meeting, right?
Right on, yep.
Don't go away, Director. We have you up again here for the monthly department report.
So thank you. This is the monthly report that we've been doing for some time now to be able to give people an idea of the projects that are going on in the city. As you know, in the past, we used to do a lot of these kinds of projects at the Planning Commission level, and all these projects have now gone to the hearing examiner. And so what we're talking about is this administrator's report that's attached to your monthly report, and that's the one I want to steer you to, because it has all the updates of all the current projects that are ongoing. For instance, at the top of the list is the Sullivan annexation and the Crosby Villa development, which is 4 apartment buildings, a total of 62 units. You can see as you read across the screen, There's a number of updates for you. In the red category, the review status is there, and it tells you what the city is waiting for and what the next steps are. One of the challenges we've had in the past is that people didn't know where a project was, and so they constantly were asking for updates. And this city administrator's report does that once a month. So all of the projects are updated by the staff before it goes out. And I think it's really a handy tool that I use. Now, eventually, we'll have all this on the new llama permitting system online, so you'll be able to go online and find out more information. We've been working with our consultant Davenport company to help update this stuff on our website. The other attachment that you see here is the building permit report, and that is currently available on the website. So if you go into actually it's the Davenport site for permits. The way to get there is you go onto our website, you go to the How Do I category, and then after you go to How Do I, you go to Permits, click on Permits, and it takes you directly to our llama permitting system. And that's where you can start tracking all your data from various permits. So the building permit information is already there, and we're working to get the planning information there as well. So there'll be lots of sources for you to get updates to this information, the city administrator's report and the online. So any questions currently on current projects or things that we've been working on that you'd like to know more about?
Sure.
Are we close to seeing a house being built on Hillside, in your knowledge?
The project, they're working currently on grading, and they have permits already for 11 homes up on Hillside. And as you can see, they're putting pads in, and they're putting in they're putting in retaining walls, and then they're going to be starting fairly soon.
Any other questions?
So one of the challenges, again, on Hillside is labor. So the developers had a hard time finding labor out here on the island, and we've heard that he's making more progress in that respect because jobs are shutting down in other parts of the state, and so more labor has been available. Next steps, also, Sabrina mentioned the City Hall open house between 4 and 6, and that's April 19th. We encourage you to come down and see us. We're going to have our new permitting system on downstairs and be able to show you some of that information, as well as the new active transportation plan. That's something CAC-CMAC's been working on, and so we're going to have a survey that you'll be able to take to help us figure out how to develop the active transportation plan, where there should be pedestrian paths, bike paths, that sort of thing. The next Planning Commission meeting is April 25th. And then the next big item is the joint work session. It's been requested by planning commissioners for quite a long time. And so we've been able to set this up for the workshop on May 17th at 3 p.m. And so that could be 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is. The first hour and a half will be economic development. Steve McCaslin will be presenting economic development. And then after that, we're going to have CAC-CMAC in to talk about the bigger comprehensive planning effort that we're going to be doing for 2025, as well as some focus on Main Street and the downtown. So we want to introduce those topics to you, and then at the end, you'll have a chance to ask the city council questions and get a dialogue started. So that's the purpose behind the joint city council meeting. And so we just talked about planning commission statistics, so I'm available for any other questions you may have.
Sarah, you have a question?
Thanks. I had a recommendation on the on stakeholder outreach regarding the active transportation plan. I was in downtown about a month or so ago and met a group of local two-car cyclists that are part of a cycling club in the area, and most of them reported that they used a lot of bicycling for local transportation, not just for recreational. And they had a lot of feedback for the city, and recommended they come to Planning Commission and share that. But it strikes me that that CAC or a member of the team might want to reach out to Skagit Cycles in downtown Oak Harbor and maybe find a way to like post your survey there, or post a sign around direct outreach to the bicycling community on Whidbey through Skagit Cycles, because they do have a robust community that come through that business in downtown.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Commissioner Schott. Yes, the team has been working aggressively for public outreach on the active transportation plan, the surveys they're planning to do, the strategies for the surveys. There's going to be a focus group that Faye Michoud has already volunteered to be part of from the Planning Commission. And so, yes, Skagit Cycles certainly would be a good group to do outreach, and we'll certainly pass that along to Sabrina, because Sabrina is also on the team that's helping put together the active transportation plan, along with Kat Kamak and Alex Warner from the engineering department. So this has a lot of momentum, and certainly we're actually going to go to the big holiday Howland happening that's here in town. So they plan to staff that and have surveys passed out there as well. So a lot of different chances to do outreach with the public.
You know, David, there
Thanks.
was in the past, if you think it's a year, it's been 2 years, 4 years. But we talked about a lot of pedestrian and cycling paths on the highways and different things that were proposed. And I don't know whatever happened with all that. I don't think it got implemented as such. Was it theory or?
I'm not sure, about 4 years ago, but I can tell you the 2016 transportation plan was done, and this active transportation plan will do just that. So it'll pick certain areas to have pedestrian corridors, improvements, as well into certain neighborhoods, as well as bike paths. And it'll all be based on the survey that people like yourselves complete to tell the city what you'd like to see. And so this is going to be a much more aggressive approach. I can tell you that CAC Kamak's philosophy has been to try and connect transportation to certain businesses, as well as maybe a transportation route to the military base, so that people can use these more functionally rather than recreationally. Obviously, recreation is fine too, but he'd like to see this active transportation plan be connections for people to get from one part of town to the next in areas that you can't currently.
Well, I know currently, I know firsthand, I have employees that cycle miles to get to and from work, and it's not ideal in certain situations and could be improved upon. I mean, the plan that I tried to recollect was making Midway, for example, a lesser lane of traffic and more of a lane for cyclists and or pedestrians. And that's the kind of thing I don't know if it's still being considered or if that's something that's going to be looked at again.
Yes, Commissioner, the answer is yes. Road diet on Midway to reduce the number of lanes and provide active transportation corridors through there is still something that's contemplated. So I encourage you all to participate and fill out the survey.
Any other questions for David? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David. Appreciate it. Well, that's the last item on our agenda this evening. If commissioners, do you have anything else for the good of the order? If not, meeting's adjourned.